tournament where he won freestyle and took second in Greco. His performance earned him a spot on the All-Army team. But Randy set his sights even higher.
In the military, he realized, winning some high-level international competitions, that he had, on the right day, what it took to compete and do very well in the Olympics as a Greco-Roman wrestler.
I could see myself making the Olympics, and that's kind of when that dream really started to form.
If you're an Olympian, you know, that's the highest level that we really have to measure ourselves as being, successful, and being able to compete on that level at any given time is a hallmark.
Competing at that level meant spending more time in the gym and on the road, even after Sharon gave birth to their second child, daughter Amy. But the constant training soon took its toll on Randy's family life.
I think that definitely puts a strain on any kind of a relationship. If you don't see each other often, you tend to grow apart, grow in different directions.
By 1988, with the Olympic trials coming up, he extended his military service and moved the family stateside to better prepare. Once back, Randy worked harder than ever. He was invited to the U.S. Olympic Greco-Roman wrestling trials and seemed well on his way to the Seoul Games.
Training to make the Olympic team, that's pretty serious business.
He was up against the best of the best, current and former Division I collegiate standouts.
Essentially, you have this cadre of mostly national team members that have obviously demonstrated a significant talent and abilities in the sport of wrestling.
The number one person gets to go to the Olympics, and number two guy stays home. And that's what happened to Randy.
Though he was named an alternate, Randy fell short of his dream. It was a crushing disappointment.
That was his goal, that was his dream, to take part in the Olympics, and it was heartbreaking for him.
But the experience put him on the radar of the biggest names in collegiate wrestling. And with his enlistment in the Army about to end, Randy had new opportunities.
I had college coaches calling me off the hook. It was kind of a big crossroads for me.
6 years after he left college to provide for his family, 25-year-old Randy found himself back on campus. This time as a member of the powerhouse Oklahoma State University wrestling team.
I rolled in there on my recruiting trip that summer in 1988, and there were 5 or 6 guys that were eventually on the Olympic team in that wrestling room practicing that summer. It was like a dream. It was definitely the place to be.
It was a little bit of a hard transition at first because he came from doing Greco-Roman in the military to now going back to freestyle. But with the work ethic they have at Oklahoma State, it was an easy transition for him to make. And he went on to have tremendous success as a college wrestler.
Focusing on freestyle wasn't the only adjustment. Practicing and partying with single guys 4 or 5 years his junior put added stress on Randy's already troubled marriage.
I kind of led a double life all through this time. When I was away and traveling and all that, I was with all the single guys.
But at home, he was the devoted father.
He definitely made time for us when he was home. All the neighborhood kids would come over, and he's kind of like a human jungle gym when you're, yay high.
At Oklahoma State, he hit his athletic stride. He was named All-American 3 times and finished his senior season as the nation's top-ranked wrestler at 190 pounds.
He had good technique. He was a little older, a little more mature than the college kids because he had spent 6 years in the service.
Following graduation, he again set his sights on the Olympics. The '92 Barcelona Games were coming up. As an alternate in the '88 Olympic trials, Randy was a consensus favorite to make the team.
He had beaten Mike Foy, who at the time was the world silver medalist, making Randy the #1 guy in the 198-pound division to go to the Olympics.
But with an Olympic berth on the line, the unthinkable happened.
So he goes to the trials. Once again, he meets up with Mike Foy, the guy he beat 2 times before, and ends up losing 2 out of 3 to him.
Again, Randy was named as an alternate. His Olympic hopes dashed for a second time in 4 years.
When the guys expected me to win the nationals or expected me to make the Olympic team, I found a way to come up second, to not perform in those situations.
With his Olympic dream postponed again, in 1992, he accepted a job as the assistant wrestling coach at Oregon State. Randy hoped the move back to the Pacific Northwest, where he and Sharon grew up, would help his troubled marriage.
Had rolled into Oregon State in 1992 that summer, and it was at that point that the marriage was really kind of starting to suffer.
In Corvallis, Randy struck up a friendship with the Oregon State volleyball coach, Tricia Becker. Their offices were next door to each other's. What began as innocent lunches quickly developed into much more.
Met Trish, and that whole relationship kind of took off. That was right there, you know, where I lived.
Sharon packed up the kids and headed to Seattle. Randy remained in Oregon.
It was very, very difficult. It was hard on everybody. It was hard on my kids. It was hard on everybody, my entire family.
For Randy, these were dark times. The man who prided himself in being involved with his kids was now an infrequent visitor.
Just seeing the emotional stress that they were going through and knowing that things were going to change so drastically was frightening.
And if things weren't already bad enough, in 1996, Randy once again missed making the Olympic team. He was named an alternate for the third consecutive time.
I certainly, was disappointed in those Olympic years that I didn't make the team.
And most guys had quit the first or second. But, that tells you something about this guy. It's an inspiration to others. Like I said, the word quit is not in his vocabulary.
Devastated and now divorced, the 33-year-old assistant coach had no idea what was next. He needed a game changer. Little did he know, that opportunity waited inside a cage. In 1996, Randy Couture was a three-time All-American and former Army wrestling champion. But at the age of 33, he was personally and professionally adrift. His dream to wrestle at the Olympics eluded him 3 times. And his marriage to his high school sweetheart ended when she discovered he was having an affair. But Randy's fortunes took a dramatic turn when a friend encouraged him to watch a videotaped fight. One of the fighters on the tape was an old opponent of Randy's.
I'm looking at this tape and I'm like, oh my God, I went to college with that guy. I knew one of the guys that was in the competition, and it was Don Fry.
But Don Fry wasn't wrestling. He was competing in a new sport called mixed martial arts, or MMA. The fight was unlike anything Randy had ever seen.
You could pull hair, you could headbutt, you could knee a downed opponent, you could strike to the groin.
To remain undefeated in the IFL.
In MMA, fighters from the world's most respected disciplines, Taekwondo, Karate, Jiu-Jitsu, Kickboxing, climb into a cage and go at it. No holds barred.
In terms of the specific rules, beyond no biting and no eye gouging, there wasn't a lot.
It was just the intrigue of seeing what's going to happen. These guys are going to kill each other right out of the gates.
Oh, and an overhand right by Hizzo puts Monson to the canvas. It's all over. They knocked him out.
There's always been the age-old question, who would win, the boxer or the karate guy?
At the time, MMA was an underground sport, marketed more for bloodlust than for bona fide competition. Its most vocal critic, Senator John McCain, called it human cockfighting.
People were used to seeing 2 guys standing up, punching each other, but with the wrestling and the punching and elbowing and all that stuff on the ground, people just weren't used to seeing that.
Word spread that this new kind of competition could also mean a payday for wrestlers willing to climb into the cage. A fact that appealed both to Randy's competitive fire and his wallet.
He sees these guys crushing in this event, making money, making a living, using their wrestling skills. So immediately he wanted into the event.
Randy thought his pedigree as an All-American wrestler would earn him a spot on any MMA fight card. But UFC, the major league of mixed martial arts, saw things differently.
He put in an application, and unfortunately the UFC at that time felt like they had too many wrestlers. And, so he got turned down.
But weeks later, the cage door swung open when an injured fighter pulled out of a competition in Atlanta. Randy got the phone call he was waiting for.
I heard that they were talking to Randy Couture about possibly coming into the event. I was excited to see somebody of his caliber coming over to the sport.
With little time to train, he was a serious underdog. His opponent was a 300-pound Finnish boxer and wrestler named Tony the Viking Halma. Homa promptly announced to the press that he would rip off Randy's arms.
I didn't actually see